Record. Boom. Okay. So, first thing we're supposed to do is talk about the key issue addressed in the readings.
So yeah, we looked at the Behind Grassroots School Advocacy, Bill Gates article.
Yeah.
So what did you guys find were some of the key issues surrounding this article?
It talks a lot about how funding of certain organizations influences teachers' opinions and researchers' opinions.
Yeah, I found that like one person's money, kind of forcing the hands of others, to change or to reform public education into like a very private business model. Because I feel like Bill Gates is coming at the approach of education from like a business standpoint, which is very, a privatization kind of view, whereas education up until this point is very much a public thing.
For sure.
I was kind of interested to see if there was any responses to this article at the time that it was published. And then I found a couple blogs, like teacher blogs, and one of them talked about basically Bill Gates just wanting to like make his mark on public education, and that he can, because he has power and money, he can do so. But some of the questions that were raised, which I thought were really important, were, does he really have the credentials to be framing a debate around education? Like, what is his background in education that he feels,
like, just because he has a whole bunch of money and...
Yeah, like, is he the right person to be being an advocate for this? And this reform, is it going to be very narrow-minded because he maybe doesn't have the full view? And like kind of going on that further, the person asked like, what educational theorists, are influencing his view on pedagogy, which I thought was really interesting because he never, this article, and I don't really know much about Bill Gates' stance on education, but does he have any theories and pedagogy views on education, or is he just think that we're doing it wrong and he can fix it?
Yeah, here's some money. We can fix everything. Hey, side note, is that... Yeah, that's him, right? Everybody else sees that?
Yeah. I did find, though, in the article, like, some of his, like, ideas aren't, like, wrong, and I think that by having a corporation like his and has so much money is great when we are living in a world that education keep getting, exactly, the federal and political governments keep making cuts to it. So we are losing access to resources due to these budget cuts. But by having a corporate influence come into play, are we then able to get some of these resources back? But again, then what happens is, are they going to be influenced by the people that are giving us money, right? Yeah. They're going to put too much demands maybe on how we educate and the approach we take.
Yeah. Do they have their own hidden agenda that they're secretly kind of working on?
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know, like, how much money he, because this is what, from 2009, I think, isn't it the last stat that they pulled up on this?
2012 was the copyright on it, but
I think they said
pull
2009 was the
data.
last time that they could see his tax filings and see how much money they were pouring into. It'd be interesting to see, like,
Oh yeah, right.
9 years later, what's
And
going on.
he has been pouring a substantial amount of funding
Yeah.
into this.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see where this money's going. So, for
Mhm.
example, his foundation paid an advisory firm in New York to mount public support for his form of education, right? And he had paid a bunch of universities to support pieces of the Gates agenda. So the money is going into feeding the support for him, right? Like, you're going to get money, but you got to support my ideas.
Yeah, literally.
So, like, there's a hidden, like we talked about, there's that hidden agenda. And even if he's outright saying, like, I'm going to give you money, but you have to support me, okay, that's fine. But, he is being transparent, but there's always, when money's attached to it, there's going to be something that's going to come along with it. You're not going to get anything in life for free. And you're not going to get money for free.
No.
Yeah, no. But also, in this article, when it said he donated $160,000, which allowed for 2,500 teachers to be hired, which is good, which we would need right now, because right now, with all the budget cuts, they're giving CEOs more money, and they're expecting teachers to be okay with being cut and having more money cut out of the budget.
It's amazing how much money they're putting into this. When you start, like, really keep reading over it over and over again, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, I don't understand why we can't just find a good way to use it and a productive way to use.
Well, it's not that we can't use it in a productive way. It's that if he's going to, Bill Gates' idea that if he's going to give education money, he wants it to be done in the way that he feels education should be done. And he speaks a lot about privatization of education, right? The whole concept of charter schools. And a charter school evidently is just a private school, where when you think of privatization, the rich benefit and the poor do not, right? By having education be public, there's equality to it, or that's the goal. Everyone has access to it. Everyone has the right to succeed.
Yeah.
Also, when you start privatizing things, there's a benefit of a charter school is that you're going to be able to pay the best teachers out there.
Yeah.
Right? Because in our current system, we're unionized. So once you're in, it doesn't matter how good you are, you're in.
Yeah,
and it's very hard to get somebody out, to get fired, right? To do some pretty nasty things. So he does talk a little bit about, like, how we're evaluating teacher performance, which I don't think is a negative thing, but what are his evaluations being based on? It's going to be what Bill Gates thinks makes a good teacher.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful when we, again, I see the positives of, like, money and, like, what we can do with it, but then again,
we
what
can't
are
just like blindly follow due to money.
Yes. Yeah.
What else do we have to do?
Statement that I found really interesting was Bill Gates doesn't want teachers to be the scapegoats anymore. So he wants to invest in them and support them.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just thought that was a powerful statement.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where, like, too, like, I actually highlighted parts of this article as like things that I'm like, ooh, this is a really good thing. You know what I mean? Like, I think we need to question how we evaluate performance. And I think it's great that we're going to put money into, elevating teachers' ability. Like you said, not putting them as the scapegoats, and access to resources. Like, all these things I thought were, like, really good. But then when you start thinking of the bigger terms of privatization, I think that's where sometimes you get kind of worried, right? And I think that's what this article is trying to say. what is the hidden agenda?
Oh, never mind. I'm just reading the chat.
So yeah, do we want to touch on the ideas of what corporatization of education is and the neoliberalism? Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, does anyone like look those things up on the internet?
So corporatization is basically making education into a business.
Business, yeah.
They want to turn whatever we're teaching into a business model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found some different like journal articles about like, you know, the selling of education, you know, so it's something that can be bought and sold. Education is something to be consumed rather than an activity in which we participate. Mm-hmm. I think too, when you make something by corporationing, you know, students are going to want to see obvious and tangible benefits from their studies, right? Like if they're investing their money, they're going to want to see a particular outcome. So like, exactly. If I'm going to pay, what job am I going to get?
Yeah.
And if I'm paying more, I should be getting
my chance? What's my success rate of getting that job?
Mm-hmm. And again, that kind of idea of like like a corporate branding, you know what I mean? I kind of talked about too, like corporate research partnerships. So here at the university, we would see that as a particular private sector funding a research project, but they're going to benefit from it because they want that research done. So yes, the university and that department is going to get the funding to do that research, but it's because this oil company wants to know if there's oil in this soil. So they're going to go to the geology department, right? Like when there's money, there's going to be, again, that other agenda to it, not just for the sake of research. There's going to be a purpose behind it, hopefully. Well, the company's going to probably want that.
Mm-hmm. I think too, like there's obviously a lot of negatives that come with like corporatizing education and then going into like the neoliberalism, like private schools and stuff. I mean, like, the only benefit I could really see out of it is you create competition between the schools, right? Like you push the schools and the systems themselves to try to be better, like you said, in order for students to see the results out of each. I mean, like that is a pro of it, I guess, but at the same time, what's the cost of doing that? Like, and how much does it cost? Who do you eliminate from getting an education?
And like, I think too, like clearly, like our universities are more of a privatized,
mm-hmm.
you know, thing because we pay for it. Whereas like up in, you know, prior to university or post-secondary, you know, it's education's public and it's for everyone. But if we start to privatize that, I worry about that concept of those who have money will benefit because they will be able to afford the best private schools, whereas those who do not will only suffer. Because if I'm an educator and I'm going to get paid twice as much to teach at this private school, and they see me as a valuable educator, I'm going to go there than work. For sure. You know what I mean? Like if I'm about the dollar, then am I going to work for the public school? So the public schools are going to suffer if they're not being able to be competitive with the private sector. And we see this already happening mm-hmm. with like privatization of like children's preschools and stuff like that, right? Like, you know, the more money you have, the more you pay somebody, right?
Yeah.
And then also with like private schools, like the more like, expensive it is, the better it is. I'm like, no, it probably is not any better. Whereas I think I haven't heard of privatization of preschools either.
No?
Like my hometown, the preschool is run out of the daycare. It has nothing to do with the school. They're not even in the same building.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, so for example, in Regina, we have pre-K programs for children, and it's there's no cost to families. So not every school, public or Catholic, has a pre-K program. If they do, the spots go first to those who are in need. So children who may be lacking in development, who maybe have specific diagnoses, and also those who are impoverished. This is a fact. That's how the public sector of schools does it. On the flip side, we have childcare centers who run like a home daycare. So it's just like you bring your kid here, I watch them, where we have early childhood education centers that follow the mandate of the Ministry of Education, such as emergent curriculum. And then we have preschools and childcare centers such as Montessori that have a specific way of teaching and have a specific curriculum and a particular focus, and that you will pay more for than you will just regular daycare. So yes, we do have, I would say, a level of privatization within our preschool system right away there, right? And I know of people who have their kids in regular daycare and pull them half the day to put them in Montessori and pay for that in addition too, because they feel that that's going to give their child the edge, and they have the funds to put them in 2 programs simultaneously, paying double. But then we have people who don't have any funds, and daycare is an extremely high cost.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think too, kind of speaking of that Montessori, they then get to pick how they are going to educate your children. Like, it's a particular style. So if we start privatizing elementary schools, these private sectors can start choosing what content they're going to teach. They're no longer necessarily mandated by the provincial government or the federal government and this Ministry of Education, which outlines curriculum guidelines, objectives, and what a qualified teacher looks like with an education degree. So I think that's a fear, right, when you go to a private way of thinking. And then if you have people investing like Bill Gates a lot of money, he's going to want it done his way. If I'm giving you millions of dollars,
Yeah.
I want it, So again, that's just kind of the thoughts. I read too in one of the journal articles that privatization can equate to further segregation, and then also that inequality that we spoke to. So like, I just thought those 2 words were pretty powerful, because I think we live in a society where we are trying to be socially just and not segregate. That word has a lot of negative connotation to it. And like inequality, but I think that's sometimes what privatization can lead to.
Oh, for sure.
Some of the negative,
you could definitely see schools being set up for this class, this race, already. I mean, we already have a little bit of it. Not like, there's Catholic and public schools kind of alone already, where they kind of segregate a little bit, not to the extreme of obviously what could happen, but.
Well, and here in Regina, we have like all the high schools anyone can go to. Like, you go to based on your area of the city, but you can choose, public or Catholic. But we also have Luther High School, and if you want to go to it and you're a Regina resident, you still have to pay a fee, even if your child is not like living in the dorms. Because again, they argue that they are providing a better education, that they're going to do more for your kid, and they're going to do that because you're paying them.
Yeah.
Again, who can have access to that education? Those with money.
Yeah.
But also, like, where's the proof? Where's the statistics that people actually do get a better education in a private school that you have to pay for? Like, who says that you get a better education? Like, where's the proof that you actually get a better education when you pay for it.
I think there's like almost a kind of stigma though with it too. Like I'm sure even universities have a bias toward it, where probably more prevalent in the States, where a kid goes to a certain private school and they see that application come across the desk compared to mine that went to whatever public school. Maybe my marks are better, but that stigma itself, I think, is just part of the private school, that you just naturally think, oh, well, they went there, it has to be a better education.
Well, and it's status, right? It's elevating that status. It's saying you have something above the rest, like something that separates you. And like we see it in our universities as well, right? Like you hear about, well, if you're going to go into this type of schooling, whether it be education or engineering or business, there's certain universities that are seen as the better ones to go to because they have programs that produce the best, or that are seen as, better in whatever ways. But I think that kind of goes to like that idea of corporatization of education, where Sydney, you were saying, like, do these private schools do better? Do they produce these better students? Well, if I'm paying as a parent more money for my kid to go to school, they better be getting a better education, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that by corporatization of education, and I read this, it says like students and parents are obviously going to want to see tangible benefits, right? That they're getting more out of this, that they're going to get the better job, than the guy who didn't pay. Which I think, can, again, just further separate us as a human race and a society as to like this elitist and not elite statuses, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, even another example of that is like Notre Dame College, just outside in Wilcox, there out of the city. Like I said, that's another hole where a status thing where you pay a lot of money and you think your kid is a upper echelon student and athlete. You send them
kind of for like the jocks of like hockey mostly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then a school like that has like a sport focus, the goal then of the parent is they may not be tapping into their like elite educational performance, but by giving them an edge athletically, they may get a better scholarship to and then get asked to go to a post-secondary place. You know what I mean? And as parents, we want to be able to set our kids up for the best that they can. Mm-hmm. And we don't want to have them take out student loans and pay out of pocket. So if I, as a parent in the early years in high school, can get them to Notre Dame so they can become the best hockey player they can be, so they can be scouted to get a scholarship at a university, I'm just helping set them up for the future even more, right? Yeah. So like we're already starting to do it at a non-post-secondary level.
And it's not like that's a bad thing for a parent to do. You just want the best for your kid, right?
Exactly. It's like these parents who put these children in like preschool and a daycare setting because they think that their child's going to get that edge, is going to better prepare them, which is not, like you said, it's not a bad thing. But when we do this, are we then furthering the gap between those who need and those who already have?
Yeah.
Because I think then we can kind of start talking about the third question of like, what are the dangers and the negatives of these ideas within corporatization of education and neoliberalism and what Bill Gates is saying, but also like maybe what are the benefits?
Mm-hmm. I think we've talked about like quite a bit of the dangers already, like with an unknown agenda, people who are investing money all of a sudden becoming in power, making decisions. Also, education no longer just being education and more becoming a business about making money and producing results than what it's truly intended to be.
Yeah.
And then you're also going to have those kids too that are in poverty already, so they can't afford to go to this elite school. So then they can't get into the next level to like get themselves out, right?
Yeah.
So then you just continue on that cycle of poverty.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Like, you can't get out of out of the cycle of that your family has been in or you've been in, where you're stuck in the rut and have no possible way of getting out.
Not that
But
it's
we know.
impossible, but that's just making that barrier so much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But we know, how do you get out of poverty? Through education.
Yeah.
When you have an education, you can be better prepared to know about what proper nutrition is, making social connections, getting a better job, learning life skills, learning to be literate, like learning basic fundamentals that will set you up for a better life. Like when we look at our social justice issues within our own backyard, within our own Saskatchewan context, the argument is that through education, we open doors, right? That by just, throwing money at things doesn't solve the problem. We need to educate, right? Like, again, as a proverb or how it goes, you can give a man a fish and feed him once, but if you teach a man to fish, he can feed himself for a lifetime.
Yeah.
Right? And that again is the model of education. So if we continue to put money into things that only benefit those who already have money, are we not just doing a greater disservice to our global society?
Yeah. I mean, I think there is, obviously, with benefits too. I mean, the funding is definitely a help. We can see it firsthand in Saskatchewan here, all of the program cuts that we've seen in schooling alone. I mean, I remember I didn't think I'd ever see that cut, having swimming lessons in school. It's just one of those things that parents didn't have to worry about. And up until grade 6, you were in swimming lessons all the way through, and now that's completely gone. Or even budgeting schools with how much paper they can photocopy a year, kind of deal. Like something small like that, some of this funding can really, really, really help for sure. And I mean, it leads to new technologies, new programs, new resources for students. But again, I guess it's probably just finding that balance of, is somebody like Bill Gates, who is putting the money in, going to be manipulating how the money is spent? And then at that point, is it actually still benefiting the students?
Yeah, or is it doing more harm?
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have the proper background knowledge of what's happening.
And I think too, like some of the stuff we touched on last week with our 21st century competencies and trying to educate our children to be digitally literate, and providing all this educational technology and media into our classroom to prepare them to be these global citizens of the world. We cannot introduce them to these new ways and these teaching strategies and forms of assessment without the proper resources. So I hear you on that, and that's what I think of the positive part about privatization or the influx of funding from corporations, is that then we can now have access to these beautiful resources that are only going to benefit the future learners, the students of today, to be the future of tomorrow, right? Yeah. But at what cost? Yeah,
for sure. And I think you see a firsthand kind of take on what the privatization and corporations coming in more in the States with some large, like University of Texas or something like that. Like the amount of money that's tossed in, like booster wise, it's thrown into the school and how much they can benefit out of it. But again, it costs a lot of money to go to that school. So I mean, like there always is a flip side of, how far do you go at what cost?
Yeah, I'm reading what Nick said in the comments. I agree with that a lot. I went through high school every day telling my teachers that I need to learn stuff that will actually help me in life. Because you learn a lot of not necessarily useless things, but things that you're not going to use every day, realistically. Whereas if we did have like a manager finances, or, hey, let's learn about some taxes, like things that will actually benefit us, because how are we supposed to know about any of that if nobody's going to teach us, instead of being thrown into the world, and now we got student loans to pay interest on. And
well, and I think then too, like that is where I feel the argument about privatization could be supported. You know, if you have a more private school that is more focused on what I want to learn, even in a high school level, that I think is going to benefit me in the career and future I want, that's going to set me up to be the best, you know, person I need to be, then you can maybe be more picky and choosy. Whereas right now, if you go to a high school, a public high school in our province, all of them are following the same curriculum. If you're taking science, or if you're taking English or math, you know, we're all taking the same stuff. It may be taught differently through different strategies, and there may be the teacher may have a different pedagogical approach or a way of assessing us, but we're all learning the same thing, right? So there isn't a lot of, the door is really closed to customization. But then on the flip side, if all these different schools start customizing and picking and choosing on what learners are going to learn, we lose continuity. We lose consistency, potentially, right, in what a student should leave grade 12 with.
Yeah, and like even in high school, like you get to choose your classes. Like you get to choose which ones you want to sign up for, or mine did at least. Like I could choose what classes like I wanted to take, and then I could try and move them around. And if they take that away, like realistically, how many kids are actually gonna want to go to school anymore? Because they won't get to learn what they want to learn.
Yeah, and then there is a level like you said.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can, like, there's like, when I went to school, you could pick certain classes. There was still a core group, no matter what you had to take to graduate high school. Like I could choose to take social studies, or they called it native studies, or I could take French. Or MEC. Like that was my options. Or I could take gym class. It wasn't, you know, I don't want to take English this year. And I think like you can't get completely away from that. Like I think that there has to be some.
Well, and I think that's where too that argument is, like we try to provide that at a high school level, right? Like if I want to learn how to cook, I can take home ec 10, 20, and 30, right? And I can learn everything I need to know in that respect.
Because that's what you want to do,
right? Like, but we're also not forcing students to learn how to cook.
No.
So when you were in high school, you weren't that interested in cooking, you may not be prepared as an adult to cook in the real world.
Sure.
Skill that, like Nick was saying here, that, you know, that's something that we all should learn, right? Because if you don't grow up in a home, you know, where you're seeing somebody cooking on a daily basis, or you're being included in that process, it is quite a shock when you hit the real world. I know I had a life studies class in high school, and this was over 12, 13 years ago. And again, we talked a bit more about, you know, how to create a resume and a profile, and, you know, how to look at career choices and, you know, finances to a degree, right? But it was just scratching the surface. But again, is that a skill that we should be telling our students and of course they must take, because it's something they should be prepared for.
I think it becomes scary too with the customization of, I'm kind of learning about it in math class right now, how like math is used as a kind of course to direct students where you want them to go, kind of deal. Where like I know when I was in school, like you took math 9, math 10, math 11, A30, B30, C30, and then you could go into pre-calc, algebra, or whatever like that. You kind of go. This new one just kind of seems like, I think there's foundations.
There's foundations, workplace, pre-cal.
Yeah, and pre-calc, where like you're kind of locked in when you.
What direction you go in? Is that how it is? I
think that's kind of how it is it not, Sydney?
Well, like if you're going into the trades, you take workplace more. And if you're not going into a trades, you don't even look at workplace. You just foundation.
What I'm trying to say is that's like a pretty big decision to put on a grade 9 student, right? Like not a lot of us.
Which math do you want to take? Because if you don't take foundations, but if you don't take this math, and then there's just too many maths for them to decide.
And like I'm just saying, like that's a lot to put on a young student to decide. Like I mean, a lot of people graduate high school not even knowing what they want to do. I know a lot of kids that were my age just took all the way up to C30 because that benefited you, that you could apply for this program, this program, this program, this program, this program, just to give yourself some options kind of deal. Whereas I feel like now with this stuff, like, I don't know if you're fully locked in if you can switch back and forth, but you got to make a pretty big decision at a young age, and that's your path. Like, your decision has been made. So I think that's like the thing, like going back to customization, like if you give it too much and you start giving kids freedom to start picking, like, I don't want to take this and I want to take this, and all of a sudden you go 4 years down the road and you say, oh, you know what, I want to be a biologist, but you decided
you
didn't take biology. So, well,
but then are you limiting their options in the future, right? Like, if they've closed these doors too early. But then if we tell the children, you need to learn everything, that can be overwhelming, right? You know, so again, it's, I think,
the middle ground.
I think the whole thing is just going to be a bunch of like back and forth, like, yes, this, but like, we don't want them to have anxiety attacks every day.
Yeah, it's about obviously balance. Like, that is life, right? You know, learning a balance. And I hear you, Nick, that yes, in high school and in university, it's more theory than practice. But really, the argument is that university is just that. It is to acquire higher knowledge. Whereas if you want more practical experience, then you look at like a polytechnic or a trade school. I feel like in education, by some of the courses we take with, and then with our internships, we're getting more of that practice, and it's a requirement. You need to be successful at your internships in order to get your degree and get a job in this field. You know, you need to be good at the practical piece of teaching, not just the theoretical background. But one would argue, in order to be an effective educator and to be a master, we need to have a level of theory. Because we need to be able to argue why we're teaching the way we teach, what our pedagogical approach means, why it is effective.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I have 2 previous degrees that are just theory-based. I did not get a job from either of them. They provided me with a plethora of knowledge, and I got really good at writing papers. But again, if I wanted to go further in human justice or with a psych degree, a graduate degree was a must. Else I was not going to be doing a level of job that I wanted. So that is an argument too behind a humanities degree and a focus, is that you are just acquiring knowledge at the very beginning. But then there's a level of competitiveness when you move into a graduate program.
Well, yeah, even with like whoever's doing like whoever wants to teach secondary, like me, where you have to pick a major and a minor, like your first year you kind of take your basic like English 100 and math 110, but then the following years, like, you start to focus more right on your major and your minor. So even with education, like, we get a huge say in like what classes we kind of are going to take, like what kind of classes we want to take, I think.
Well, and I would hope as a secondary teacher, if you know your plan is to teach English, that you're going to be better at teaching it because you have courses in it than somebody who decided to teach biology, because I hope they had more classes that are focused in that area, right? Like, you know, again, when we're in front of the students, you know, we are that mediator, we're that dispenser and access to knowledge. But at the end of the day, we should be more of an expert, hopefully, than our, students, and then two, depending on our focus, than our peers who maybe have other majors of focus. But I guess all in all, we've been talking for about 40 minutes. It's really 10 after 6. I know, Dryden, you have to peace out here. Does anybody have anything else that we want to kind of relay on this topic before going into Wednesday?
I think we covered it pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just giving Nick another minute in case he's typing or something.
Fair enough.
Oh, for sure. I think there is a way for you to save that, like the writing piece, because it doesn't record.
Oh, okay.
Click more and then save chat.
Show in folder. Hey, look, boom.
Okay, so then you can, when you attach the video to Christine, you can maybe attach that text as well. So we got an email from Ashley on your courses, and Kylie from Group C is going to send out the room code for us to access, and we're going to meet at 7:15 on Wednesday with Group C. Because one of their people.
7:15 or 7:50?
7:15.
Okay.
Yeah, she sent an email just saying if that's cool, because she has something that's delaying her a bit. So yeah, so
7:15 works for everybody. Okay.
Perfect. So yeah, just a heads up. So we'll be getting, look at your U of R course emails. She'll be sending the room code, and then we can all join and chat. I think they were to look at the other article, and then we're going to kind of discuss all this.
Yeah, no, we're probably going to be like, we'll tell them kind of what it talked about, and then they'll tell us what theirs talked about, and blah, blah, blah. And yeah.
Don't be so excited, Cindy.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
excited.
Good job, team. Peace out. See you
Go
Wednesday.
team.
Wednesday.
Bye.
Bye.